once you get through the initial ickiness of it, that's actually pretty good.
In my world of unusual foods, bug eating is sparking way more outrage than I could have ever imagined. So today we're going to dive into the global conspiracy to swap your steak for a roach burger.
A recent report says insects are the future of food.
2 billion people in the world eat bug. I'm telling you, I'd win Survivor.
The kind of surprisingly concerted effort that does exist behind it, and what the science is around bug eating anyway.
Edible insects require far less resources than other livestock.
And finally, as a guy who's eaten just more insects than you could possibly imagine, I'm going to give you my complete rundown. There are a few out there that would actually blow you away. They're really good. And there's also a lot of, pretty icky stuff as well that you need to avoid.
All right, guys, it's action time.
You see, I've been eating bugs for years, way before it was cool. Basically, look, if it genuinely is consumed as part of a food culture, then I'm pretty interested in finding out why. But nowadays, things have really started to change. I'm either being called a shill for the World Economic Forum or being told that I need to man up because bugs are basically just land prawns. That last one is kind of odd because it's used both ways. Like, people come to me and say, why would you ever eat that ocean cockroach when I'm doing videos about crabs or lobsters? And hey, you can leave all the ocean cockroaches you like to me. I'm happy to eat that lobster, no problem. But if you're unfamiliar with the insect eating controversy, here's the rundown. It all started back in 2013 with a serious proposal from the Food and Agricultural Organization.
They actually already play a major role in the food security of the people because 2 billion people in the world, that means 1/3 of the population of the world is already eating insects.
They put out Edible Insects, Future Prospects for Food and Feed Security, promoting bugs as a sustainable protein source to tackle global food security.
I mean, we know that the population is growing and there's going to be an increased demand for food and protein in general. And insects offer one option of providing this protein. Insects are a very nutritious element that could provide a healthy diet.
And soon enough, the idea was picked up by the World Economic Forum, who framed insects as a highly efficient protein source.
Termites, grasshoppers, crickets,
By some accounts, more than 2,000 species of them.
locusts, bamboo worms, cicadas, pollen,
Emperor moth caterpillars, lightly salted and ready to eat.
Farming insects for food also has less environmental impact than livestock farms do, because insects emit far less greenhouse gas and use up less space, water, and food.
Where the hell is Moo?
Don't worry, we'll get to the cows. I'm not going to try and indoctrinate you into some kind of ESG religion. Anyway, they doubled down by sponsoring and publishing a report of their own titled Good Grub, Why We Might Be Eating Insects Soon. And it didn't stop there. In 2018, the conversation around bug eating had become really serious. The WEF featured it prominently at Davos meetings, where global leaders and NGOs spotlighted the environmental and economic benefits of insects protein. Partnerships were formed and practical demonstrations showcased that large-scale production of bugs as a food source were viable.
The company is called Insect. This is an insect protein just been approved by the EU.
I'm Nicole Kidman, and I am going to eat a 4-course meal of bugs.
So we actually farm crickets in Austin, Texas, and palm weevil larvae in Ghana, both of which are extremely nutritious and have a high amount of protein, iron, and other micronutrients.
And all of this culminated in the famous 2020 plan labelled the Great Reset. The World Economic Forum made insect protein part of a larger idea to build resilience and sustainability into the global food system in a post-pandemic world. But I think it's fair to say that this was the turning point.
A Great Reset? That sounds more like buzzword bingo masking some nefarious plan for world domination.
The Great Reset was a PR disaster. And if you ask me, rightly so. Instead of rallying people, it repulsed them.
Asking people to stay at home and shutting down population movement is buying time and reducing the pressure on health systems. But on their own, these measures will not extinguish epidemics.
Global lockdowns caused widespread anxiety. Skeptics who'd been muttering about elite agendas felt completely vindicated, and the reset seemed to be unfolding in real time. This was the new normal. They were actually going to take away your beef burger and replace it with some kind of insect bar.
Can't you picture Klaus Schwab eating that? Or Larry Fink eating that? Are they going to serve that at the next White House Correspondents' Dinner? Of course not. This is for us. This is for the plebs to eat.
The WEF is often described as a group of supervillains, but they're also hilariously idiotic.
What do you think about a bug-based diet?
Oh, I don't think that's healthy.
No?
No.
And regardless of whether you see this as some kind of cloak and dagger backroom plot to control the world, or simply as a public proposal that gained a natural amount of momentum among politicians, their framing of beef bad, insect good does seem to have had some real-world impact. In Ireland, the government proposed a plan to cull 200,000 dairy and beef cattle to reduce agricultural emissions by 25% by 2030. New Zealand wasn't far behind, proposing the world's first livestock emission tax targeting methane from cows and sheep. In 2024, Denmark announced plans to tax farmers approximately $100 per cow as part of a groundbreaking carbon tax. And I think most famously, the Netherlands unveiled their stringent nitrogen reduction policy, mandating a 30% cut in livestock numbers to reduce nitrogen emissions. This resulted in those just massive farmers' protests that you probably saw wherever you live. And similar protests have led to most of these laws or proposals seemingly to be hung up, although some of them are getting implemented. So yeah, cow, bad. But government efforts to encourage bug eating for human consumption are still pretty limited. The European Food and Safety Authority has approved certain insects, like mealworms, for human diets.
If we make this switch, it's a huge intervention.
To understand this, we paid a visit to
Antimo Farms is North America's largest cricket producer.
Canada invested in the world's largest cricket processing facility, specifically for human consumption. And the EU has put millions into insect protein research through initiatives like the Horizon 2020, though these efforts do seem to mainly be targeting animal feed rather than people. And in the Western world, I think it's pretty fair to say that the push has primarily revolved around removing regulatory blockades and opening pathways for insect-based foods to enter the market, rather than actively pushing it onto people. But what does the science say? For starters, you're probably already consuming far more bugs than you realize.
If you live in the United States, you're chowing down on bug all the time. You just don't know it.
FDA guidelines allow for small amounts of insects and fragments in common foods like chocolate, peanut butter, and canned fruit. For example, up to 30 insect parts per 100 grams of peanut butter are allowed.
Do you drink coffee, eat chocolate? How about potato chips? They might all contain bug.
You could be eating the equivalent of a few insects every time you have a PB&J. Carmine, a red dye often found in candies and drinks, is derived from the cochineal beetles. And shellac resin from lac-bugs gives that glossy finish to candies, pills, and even sometimes fruits like apples. On the health side of things, the science is relatively strong. Insects are high in protein, packed with amino acids, and often rich in vitamins like B12, iron, or zinc. Insects, like crickets, are about 65% protein by body weight, compared to around 25% for beef. Health concerns mainly revolve around allergies, similar to those that are triggered by shellfish, and potential pesticide residues. There's also the chitin that is part of the insect shells that is not digestible, but there's little evidence to show that that is much different from something like a dietary fiber. So when should humans eat bugs?
You want to eat the bugs to save the planet?
No.
I mean, yeah. I have definitely thought about eating bugs before.
Say smoke the bud. Fuck the bugs.
Not you specifically, but I mean like humans in general. One thing I've noticed is that people almost never eat insects because they don't have the money for other options. Thanks to modern farming techniques and pretty resilient breeds, it is almost always much cheaper, even in remote areas, to eat something like chicken or pork, yet locals still go way out of their way for insects. It is often far more dangerous, way more time consuming, and way more expensive. But they choose to chase these bugs in the same way we might go after lobsters or specialty crabs, that kind of stuff. Well, Bombshell, I think you should eat them if you actually enjoy the taste. And I know this might sound kind of wild, but there are some insects that have truly unique flavor profiles that you just won't find anywhere else.
វាមានរសជាតិជូរប៉ុន្តែវាឆ្ងាញ់យើងអាចយកវាទៅមិចជាមួយនឹងស្ករអំបិលចេងមិចជាមួយនឹងគ្រឿងទេសផ្សេងៗទៀតវាខ្លាយទៅជាមុខម្ហូបមួយដែលឆ្ងាញ់សម្រាប់តំបន់ក្នុងស្រុករបស់ខ្ញុំ
This cicada nib kimchi just perfectly complements this egg. Oh, the fennel is popping as well.
As you eat it, it's like this connection that you get with the plant. It's a really beautiful, like kind of like umami kind of flavor too.
They are worth the effort. Believe me, it's not like I didn't struggle to put most of these things in my mouth. They have a huge mental block, a huge barrier that you just gotta get past.
Just try to enjoy it a little bit. Andrew, don't be rude.
But purely from a flavor standpoint, some bugs are genuinely standout.
Okay, so we have some of these semi-grown ants. We have some full ants in there.
Yummy!
Oh my god.
Red tree cutter ants from central Vietnam, Cambodia.
Mike can do it, I can do it. Oh my god, that is the weirdest flavor. It's like acidic, really acidic actually. It's not spicy or anything like that. It tastes kind of like, has like an apple-like flavor, a really citrusy apple flavor.
She said it tastes like a tamarind.
Like a tamarind? Yeah, that's true. Like very like sweet and sour flavor. Tamarind's a better example. And I've got to admit, once you get through the initial ickiness of it, that's actually pretty good.
The way that they have them in Vietnam as part of a dip with pepper and salt, and I think that makes them pretty approachable. In Cambodia, it's a bit more intimidating, eating entire handfuls of them whilst they've just been soaked in salt water. There are bamboo worms. These things are ridiculously Moorish. And sure, when you're first prying them out of the bamboo, they look pretty intimidating, but once they're cooked, they have this kind of popcorny like crunch, a sort of slightly nutty roast flavor, and they are just an incredibly good protein snack. And finally, the craziest of them all, the coconut worm. This has to be one of the most intimidating bugs that you could ever eat, especially if you're gonna do it the traditional Vietnamese style, alive, in fish sauce. They're large, they are pulsing, and they are ready to bite. You have to remove the head with the mandibles first, or they could punch a hole right through your stomach lining. But once you get past that squeamy, gushy sort of thing.
Đấy, con này ăn được luôn. Rất là ngon, béo nữa.
Which is admittedly where most people draw the line. The flavor is this creamy, coconutty goodness. When my friend Peter, a Michelin star chef, prepares them at Ang Ang, they are downright delicious.
Why the coconut well?
They taste good.
So there it is. Don't eat bugs out of obligation. Do it because you're kind of curious. Don't let anybody take your hamburger away. Don't assume people eat them out of desperation. I've rarely, if ever, encountered that. It's almost always about the flavor with some kind of cultural reason. And if you can set aside that ick factor, there is a whole new world of taste awaiting you. There's my WEF shell.